That's right. A lot of women today, they don't appreciate heft.
With you out.
Another episode of The Boy. Thank you so much for tuning in. And tonight, from the shop studio in Duval County, we also have Sean Blackwell. Thank you so much for rejoining The Boy. I was saying before the show, sometimes I feel like a madman doing this thing. I feel like, I don't know, it's for a good cause. It's the truth. The cause is the truth. And as my, the title to my show says, the truth hurts and it's weakness leaving your mind. And sometimes the truth, you know, I gotta face the truth sometimes myself. I was telling Sean that my last video had a thumbs down. So that I had to face that truth. I don't know why though. Feedback is a gift, and they chose not to give me a gift other than the thumbs down. Put a comment in there and talk about what you didn't like, or I don't know. I think I was probably a jerk or something in that one. I'm trying to work on that. I really am.
Yeah.
I'm trying to work on that, but it's just in my nature, you know.
Well, yeah. I mean, when you're talking about stuff that gets you, you know.
I know, but I feel like I'm sometimes a jerk for no reason. For just whatever. But anyway, I don't know. Maybe I'm not that bad. All right. So if you guys are having any audio issues or anything like that, please let me know. If the mics are too loud, stuff like that. I'm trying to tune, you know, sort of, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, like hone everything in. But yeah, it's getting there. It's getting there. So today, I really wanted to talk to Sean about. Originally, I was going to talk about military, or like enlistment and recruiting for military and poverty, and the connection. And then I ran into this Southern Poverty Law Center article about this Spartan training camp that's going on. And so, I mean, I know some people have a bias against Southern Poverty Law Center because they're going to say that the Southern Poverty Law Center itself is biased. And I mean, I'm sure they're biased to whatever extent that I mean, what do they do? I mean, they track hate groups mainly.
Yeah.
And
they do pro bono work for civil rights, you know, issues. You know, I mean, if that's his, you know, dangerous left wing activity, then
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to address the sort of fears or biases or whatever that are out there to let you know that I know that some people think they're biased, but I mean, to that end, whatever. They did a report on this Oath Keepers. Some of you guys might have heard about the Oath Keepers. What do you know about the Oath Keepers already?
Well, just from what I was reading, you know, they're made up of only prior service or active reserve, active guard, prior military or prior police, EMTs, basically prior public servants that have tactical skills and abilities.
So it's a specific group of people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They could easily form a militia, which is based on the article, their goal, and not just their article. I mean, it's their proclaimed goal as well. If you go to their Wikipedia, there's you go to their website. There's it's the same information that SPLC is putting out there. It's just
so for as far as a source, you actually went to the primary source, which was the Oath Keeper website.
Their website, their
and
Wikipedia,
it backs up
the heavy.com.
Yeah. So this is out in the open. I mean, in fact, it's an active recruitment program, isn't it?
Yeah, I've actually seen the bumper stickers before I knew what the hell the Oath Keepers were. Now I'll know to stay away from those bumper stickers. But
wow, yeah, okay. So for those of you guys that don't know what I'm talking about, there is a link in the description for the so for those of you that joined in on Facebook Live and also on YouTube, there is a link in the description of the Southern Poverty Law Center article that I am alluding to, and I have it pulled up here. And in fact, let me do this. I'm going to share it with y'all's. And there's a couple things I wanted to touch on specifically here. Let me switch things around. Boom. We're going to see an infinity screen for just a moment. So bear with me. Infinity screen. Oh, God. There we go. Okay. So here's Southern Poverty Law Center. Militiamen organized to use lethal force for violence-prone events in liberal urban centers. Listen, I mean, what is the definition of liberal and conservative, really? I mean, at this point, what are they talking about?
What it's become, in my opinion, is people that want to protect civil liberties, civil rights, and progress forward with, humanity, and conservatives that want to have some kind of strict adherence to their constitution, their nationalism, their majority identity at all cost. But there's so much, garbage in there as well. I mean, somebody who considers themselves a liberal may have a conservative, or what we consider a conservative viewpoint on, a certain issue, and vice versa. So, I mean, it's how you can just lump yourself into one of those groups fully. I don't know. It just seems unreasonable to me.
Yeah, but we see so much talk, like when the Southern Poverty Law Center is talking about, or at least what the Oath Keepers are claiming, liberal, urban centers.
Well, urban center. We all know that urban centers is where the majority of our minority populations live.
I mean, is that connection that these are minorities that are infinity screen again.
Well, I think so, because where did the Oath Keepers make their name? Where did they become known nationally? And it was in Ferguson, out on the streets,
Yeah, I don't really know. There's a major video issue going on here. What was I going to say? Yeah, I don't really know much about Oath Keepers. What were they doing with
in Ferguson?
Yeah.
So after
Michael
Brown was shot and killed, protesters took to the streets. And what did the Oath Keepers do? They went out there to basically do what the police wouldn't do, and that was, supposedly to keep the urban inhabitants from looting and protesting, police brutality, and unfair police brutality on blacks in this country, which is, I mean, it's a statistical fact. It happens, but
So they were like there to protect private property,
the citizenry, and that's what's so, like we were discussing before we came on the air, is the whole Oath Keepers, right? So they're supposed to keep the oath that they made as police, military, to uphold the Constitution and defend the nation against enemies, foreign and domestic. yet they're the ones that are dictating who the domestic enemies are. So that's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I get enough people together and I tell them, well, that's the enemy, I don't really, have to give a good, legitimate reason. As long as you believe in the core things that I believe in, and I tell you that they're violating them, then they're the enemy. It's a religion in itself, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, I mean, I really feel like there's a point where I'm going to have to bust out a whiteboard and like talk about a lot of the contradictions that are going on in a lot of what's happening, or what we're even seeing with I mean, like, okay, so
they're supposed to be.
I'm afraid to put the article back on because last time I did that, I had this malfunction in the video. So I'm just going to read sort of pieces of what this guy says. So he's basically, I'm going to summarize at some points and I'm going to quote some points. I'll let you know which ones. But basically, summarizing the beginning, he's going to have the most experienced law enforcement, military veterans, firefighters, EMT, search and rescue, vetted, qualified to teach and train average Americans on how to organize their own neighborhood watch, own security teams, own event security, walk them up the ladder in proficiency so they're available for the sheriff as a posse under a constitutional governor to be a state militia, or if it was called out by the President of the United States to serve as a militia of the United States to secure the schools, protect our borders, or whatever else, secure that Subway sandwich shop, whatever else he asked them to do to execute. Well, he eats McDonald's, I think.
Yeah, he's a McDonald's guy.
Our laws, repel invasions, and to suppress insurrections, which we're seeing from the left right now. So,
but what is unconstitutional about insurrection?
But here's the thing that I don't get. So if they're really oath keepers and the oath is the Constitution and all that, where are these oath keepers when the First Amendment rights of
that's the whole thing there.
Amendment the First Amendment rights of journalists are being abridged. I mean, the First Amendment's about a free press, and when journalists are getting locked up, let's say, for instance, there was a story that was hushed in the press about, is not the Dakota Access Pipeline, but there was another pipeline, and a group of, they call them eco-terrorists, but people that were basically pulling a, Tyler Durden move on some of these pipelines, and they were shutting off valves and stuff. And I know some of the pipeline folks, if you ever watch this, you're like, oh, if you shut down the valve, you can do all these bad things. And that's totally true, whatever. So they were doing that, though. They felt like that, whatever happened, the fallout from that would still further their aims. Apparently, they calculated their risk. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, they did it. And there were some journalists that were there on the scene, filming and talking about and taking notes as to what they were doing to sort of document the situation. And they got wrangled up with the the protesters, and they were sent to jail for trespassing and all this other stuff like that. And so, that really, I think that calls a constitutional question to say, granted, trespassing is one thing. You're not supposed to trespass and all that stuff. But at the same time, we expect the press to be able to inform the public, right? Our democracy, supposedly, or a representative republic, whatever, even worse, a representative republic, even more so, has to depend on an informed public, I think. Because you're trusting some jerk to go out into like Washington or whatever to represent you. So you should be informed as to who would represent you, and be able to know that that's true or not true or whatever. There should be transparency, but obviously in the world we live in, it doesn't seem like that's, well, there's no money in that.
Well, yeah, and if we come back to it, that's always where it's going to go to. But back to these oath keepers, though, and what we were talking about is that they don't care about the First Amendment. Because if you continue to read, it's like they're not going to allow insurrection to be blanketed by the rights under the First Amendment. Because they see any protest against what their final end game is as insurrection. Because they have taken it upon themselves to interpret the Constitution.
Yeah, I don't get what it is. I think a lot of this is sort of straw man stuff where they make up something about something. I don't know what they're losing or whatever. I know that I think there's something out there that there's I know people are going to get all mad when I say this, but there's like a white fear of becoming a minority.
No, that's absolutely the case.
And that, I mean, it's not an outward, I mean, other than the outward loud white people.
Yeah, well, that would be the oath keepers.
Right, oath keepers, which, you would hope, I would hope, like, as someone who just wants to live in a country that, like, can be the most awesome country, like
everybody
the Constitution seems like a pretty decent document to work things off of, and we supposedly put together a structure that we could do that with. And at the same time, it's been sullied by money, interest, any kind of power. It doesn't matter what it is. I mean, at one, someone could say, oh, well, what about unions? Okay, sure. Maybe unions were swinging power that they shouldn't have been swinging in the way. But then again, supposedly there was some COINTEL pro FBI subterfuge or whatever that word is to undermine the power of unions because the moneyed interests paid off basically the FBI because it's money there's money in helping big money. And, so by crushing the unions from within, by creating supposedly some manufactured controversies, they sort of just made the unions have a bad name. Not to say that there weren't problems with unions too. There were some problems.
Oh, absolutely.
But as I always say, the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. And that's over power. It's not over your border. And, you got to check the union power, labor power, if they start doing crazy
all power
shit.
Structures need to be checked.
Right. But we've stopped being vigilant. But here's the other thing. This is the other sort of crazy thing that I think that is sort of a miss in the whole Oath Keeper thing is they say that they are keeping an oath for the Constitution, yet I didn't see anybody fight for those jailed people that were just trying to use the First Amendment to inform the public as to what was happening. Also, anybody else that was jailed during some of these protests that were documenting some of the police brutality or documenting the rioters and protesters themselves. Getting thrown in jail for whatever period of time, etc. And this vilification of the press. Now, not to say that the corporate press isn't a sort of basically a wash rag of the corporate world and does their bidding and cleans everything up for them. At least that's what I think.
I agree. But, I think that every story that is put out there, with a few exceptions, I'm talking what these MAGA people would say is the mainstream media. So let's just say CNN. Let's use them. Granted, I'm not going to say they're not telling you the truth, because I think there is truth in every story they present. They have sources. I believe those sources. It's on how they present that truth to you. Just like Fox. Yeah, well, except for the fact that Fox will just write out lie. They're not even trying to spin a truthful story. They're just going to lie and make up a story. Like the whole Tucker Carlson thing the other night, talking about, land rights in South Africa, and, white farmers are getting massacred at record proportion. And it was just complete and total bullshit. As I heard him talking to the, Secretary of Agriculture in South Africa. He's like, actually, farmer deaths have decreased over the last 10 years in South Africa. So I don't know what the hell he's talking about.
Well, and I think it was also in relation to other crime. It's the, I mean, as far as other death statistics, dentists are dying at the same rate too. You know, it's like everybody's dying because there's something bad.
But they were trying to blame it on
South Africa.
The majority, black South Africans,
wanting to reclaim the land from the colonial, the imperialists and whatnot.
And that's where I think we go back to these oath keepers. I don't care what these groups say. They can say it's not about race. It's about maintaining our oath to the Constitution, to this country, or whatever the hell it is that they want to, however they want to spin it.
Mm-hmm.
But it is hard for me when you say things like urban, liberal urban centers, and we all know that's where the majority of our minorities congregate, are in the urban core. When you say things
it's not even a congregation. It was really
it was a forced
situation.
Yeah, it was white flight to the suburbs. Let's just leave.
And then redlining.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
All the industrial area will leave to the minorities. Nobody wants to live there anyways.
Exactly. Right. So thank you guys for joining in, especially a bunch of folks on Facebook Live. If you are on Facebook, I would also follow and subscribe or whatever to the YouTube channel. And that way you can see the edited videos that will be coming shortly in the next little while. So Jason Tucker, thank you for putting in a comment. Ask this oath keeper, quote unquote, militia to defend constitutional rights for a Muslim group to protest any various Christian-based event. Ooh. Should make for an interesting Sunday afternoon. I agree. Again, if they're truly oath keeping, then they should fight for the right for Muslims to do this or that, or practice their religion.
Well, but if you read some of the quotes from this guy and some of his supporters, is absolutely anti anything Christian, anti anything white. That is what they're going to try and squelch. They consider anything that they think is going to be detrimental to their white American pride, as insurrection or unconstitutional.
Like what? I was thinking about this a lot. Like, what exactly is, like, if you could articulate the fear of what will be, like, what is it, the exact, like, what are the repercussions of this thing? Is it like an actual fear of actual things that are thought to come, or is it just a unknown? Like,
I don't think it's fear. I think it's just hate.
Oh, okay.
I don't.
Like
I think
resentment,
it's a hate. It's a different. It's a complete.
Even the thought of having some level of numerical discount, that is enough to be.
Yeah. Right. If you're not going to come here and assimilate and pretend to be white, we don't want you.
So what? Like, what would that even be? Right. He does say something like that. Let's see, what does he say?
I mean, these are quotes. It's not like Southern Poverty Law Center just made this.
Well, and then to suppress insurrections, which we're seeing from the left right now. Like, what insurrections?
I have no idea.
I mean, sure, there's the Antifa people here and there throwing, trash cans or some. If they even did that much, I mean, really. And even then, We Are Change. If you guys look at We Are Change. I'm not affiliated with them at all, but this guy, Luke, I don't remember his last name. He does stuff like he'll run up on Henry Kissinger and ask him to like talk about the Cambodians and stuff like that. So I'm down with him. He ran up to Lord Rothschild and asked him some questions point blank on the street. So I'm surprised he got that close. I'm surprised Rothschild's walking the street. I mean, I figure there's somebody out there crazy enough to do some crazy shit. I think people are getting desperate, and as people get desperate, they start to think,
what do I have to lose?
What do I have to lose?
I want to do this.
But then again, some people join the military because they feel that way. And then at the same time, I always ask people when they think about that option as like a noble option, which I can understand if you want to defend the nation because the nation should have a fighting force. I understand that. That's great. But we have to remember who does the military listen to? The politicians,
Right,
really, at the end of the day. So
Commander in chief.
do we trust the politicians? Now, here's the other thing.
Mhm.
So through presidential orders,
Mm-hmm.
really the military becomes the hand of the king.
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing he can't do is declare war. Well, we saw in Vietnam. You don't
It doesn't
have to declare
matter.
war.
It doesn't.
to
Look
be
at us
war.
right now.
Yeah.
Right now, we're at a war on terror, which is a non-existent thing. Again, the Oath Keepers slipped here too, to Obama 2012. I don't know all the details, but in the 2012 National Defense Authorization Act,
Mm-hmm.
he created, or they, whoever, this group of people created a clause in there that basically said, if you are doing Oath Keeper type shit,
Mm-hmm.
or if you're any kind of threat at all to the sovereignty, safety,
Mm-hmm.
whatever long list of shit, it could be like the price of hamburgers or some crap. If you affect that,
Mm-hmm.
then you could be deemed a threat to the nation, and boom. And then now the military,
Interstate commerce.
the posse comitatus is suspended at these points, and now you become a potential military target, a military threat, not just like the sending Joe Bob from the police station. They're sending, they can actually disappear you, put you in the military system, put you in Guantanamo Bay. So, I mean, the Oath Keepers think that they're just on the side of the government, but at the same time, most of them are so anti-government.
Yeah.
So this is where the conundrum starts. Again, we have to put out a whiteboard like, okay, so we don't, we need to fight the government, but we have the veterans and all of these people on our side, and the military and the police are on our side, which in some cases there are white supremacists and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
That tie in to this. But I mean,
and
it would be great. It would be great if we had a militant, truly constitutional, like patriotic fighting force that was like, oh, you wrongly imprisoned a whistleblower, right, and they break them out of jail like the A-Team or something. Like, hey, we don't do that. Or hey, you defrauded the nation, you should go to jail. Just because you told them to stand down, screw it. But then again, we could see what happens if you have them and they start getting crazy like this, where they're not really looking at the Constitution, they're just looking at their idealism. And in fact, Jason Tucker said, he says, and I said, hold on, let me pull it up. He says, ask them to choose. If you put their faith versus their patriotism, you'll put them in self-conflict where they have to choose. And I think that's a big thing.
You say that, but then I agree with you that most rational thinking people would be in a conflict, an inner conflict with that. But, faith and patriotism have gone hand in hand in this country. I mean, that's true. You were patriotic if you were a white slave-owning American, and then you were just as loyal to your faith by using your faith to justify the slave ownership. I mean, so it's part of the culture to not even see that there is a difference or that there is a conflict between your patriotism and your faith. And I don't even think it's patriotism that they're barking about. It's just nationalism. It's, us versus everyone else, and we're better, and we're going to stop any influence from anything else.
Yeah, the head of this group that announced the Spartan training team, he says, and he goes on this rant about Portland, right? Of course, we all know Portland is the laughing stock of the country. Everyone knows that except for the people within Portland itself. Even Oregon itself absolutely hates its own city of Portland. It's disgusting. This is why it's so important that we go into Portland with freedom-loving Americans, people who love this country, people who love freedom, people who respect God, and to go into these dark cities. Is that like a metaphor there? Dark cities? Or like a...
I don't think so, because in Portland there's just like a bunch of weird
cloudy?
hipsters.
I don't understand.
Punk rockers.
Who are they fighting in Portland?
Anyone they don't agree with, anyone they look at and say, "Hey, he's not like me. I don't like him."
We cannot continue to just hide in our houses. So just think about this. Is this not inciting violence of some sort or some kind of action? We cannot continue to just hide in our houses or just go into the safety of a conservative city. Like what would that mean?
Don't they hate Sharia law? The whole concept of Sharia law?
What would a conservative city be? Is that like
that would be like Pensacola, Florida, or
what does that mean?
I think it just means
does that mean that
there's very Republican, very Confederate flag waving population? That's what I think of when I think what they're saying as a conservative city.
Well, if there's conservatives that end up watching the video or that are joining us live, put in the comments of what you think they're talking about, and do you think that the Oath Keepers represent conservative America? And what are you doing about it? I hear conservative. I don't like to label people, but I hear people, for instance, talk that want to put down people like Black Lives Matter, or just people that are wanting police to be accountable for their actions, and also to be aware of potential racist issues.
Right. See something, say something.
Exactly. And then that's really, but of course that turns into, if you say anything now, you're saying all cops are racist or all cops are bad, or and then it gets to the point where, like, you know what? Yeah, fuck it. Yeah, they're all bad.
Exactly.
If it's this hard to convince you there's a problem, then and the cops aren't doing anything, then you're making the argument. But anyway, it's. I think a lot of what's going on is people are also like worked into this sort of fury, not a fury, like frothed up.
Furor.
Yeah, people are getting frothed up, even like the lefties, out there. And in fact, I'm seeing more and more talk about a fracture on what most people call the liberal side of things in the liberal sort of Hillary Clinton sort of.
I never considered her what I would call a liberal.
Well, that's sort of, and in fact, that's becoming a dirty word to now people who are now identifying as quote unquote leftists, the left. So there's the liberal who are basically really center right, right wing. They're right wing in pretty much everything except for like they'll be gay about it, and they're okay with that little rainbow sticker.
Homosexuality is cool, but other than that,
right? We'll still like export your jobs. We'll still. We don't really care about police brutality. We'll say we will, but we'll pump up the prison system. We'll give the money to the charter schools. We'll extract from the public schools, and in fact, like it's. How do you have a society with a government when you have a group of people, an organization of people who are actively working to subvert the government?
That's why nobody trusts the government yet. They're willing to support this particular government. And that's what I don't understand is why are they so willing to protect this particular government, but every other government?
And Trump specifically, he said he's organizing to do whatever Trump bids them. So this like, let's go down Pretend Alley for a little bit, and let's say that because I know in a lot of right-wing circles, and right-wing folks, please jump in and say what you feel. There's some right-wing folks that. Oh man, what was I about to say? I was looking at comments and then I got distracted. Crazy. Dang it! I almost want to rewind and back and see. But anyway, what was it? Anyway, I don't know what it was, but here they are trying to put these things together and like I said, they're ready to do Trump's bidding, specifically. This is what it is, down Pretend Alley. So let's say Trump is found guilty, or like the FBI has something on him, and then and then the FBI makes a move to procure Trump in some way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he wants to evade them, right? So he gets this, sort of scurried over to some right-wing
Safe house.
Safe house, exactly, like a bunker. Because we know the rich right-wing people have actually done this and they have owned bunkers. There's like a whole cottage industry of bunker sales and stuff.
If you go to their website, you'll see them. If they're
But they have them, right?
Yeah,
right.
they're preparing for
something.
For the end of days or whatever.
Civil War or
yeah.
some kind of, something. So, I mean, it's like, again, it's like a bunch of contradictions and crazy stuff. So, for instance, if the FBI makes a move to on Trump and the right, I know a lot of right-wing people really aren't trusting the FBI right now, including, I bet, the Oath people. And if Q says anything about it, QAnon says something like the FBI is making a move, they are working for the deep state, they're da-da-da, and then the Oath Keepers read it, and then they now have to fight against the FBI. And so, like, are they going to fight the FBI now before Trump?
I think it's just a bunch of rhetoric, to be honest.
Or let's say, like, I mean, if they do get to the point where they're fighting the FBI or making these kind of moves, of course, they would then be considered national threat per that NDAA. They would be able to be moved upon by the military at that point.
Right. Well, they even say that their goal is to have a militia in place that can stop those organizations from carrying out orders from the government that they consider unconstitutional. So
yeah, but that's the thing. I can't trust them to actually read or do anything with the Constitution. Because,
well, I guess because of the guy who started this group went to Yale Law School. I guess he considers himself a constitutional lawyer now. So he is the expert on the interpretation of the Constitution. I mean, I guess our Supreme Court justices aren't good enough. He's better.
Oh, man. Well, I'm not really into what the Supreme Court's been doing.
Well, me neither. But, I mean, that is who our Constitution said would interpret the Constitution. So it doesn't really matter what we like. If we really want to go by the Constitution, that's the way it was set up. I mean, I don't like it either.
But I mean, listen, like they're like these people are frothing up
this shit that doesn't even exist.
They're making these books. Like, I thought the left was pussy hats. That's why the title is what it is. I thought they were pussy hats and queers and all, like,
we're
hippies
Portland
and
people.
And smoking pot and communists and living in the basement. And now they have to do this tactical training, Spartan training camp. I mean, listen to what the guy's saying. I mean, again, what is the left then? What is the left? And even then, Antifa, they're throwing freaking trash cans. And even then, I was telling you about We Are Change. There was an agent provocateur that, agent provocateur, it's like basically someone like the police or even FBI or something would plant someone in the crowd, and they would do the bad thing.
Right, that's what the CIA's been doing to overthrow.
Exactly, right, exactly. So what happened when I mentioned We Are Change is he was at one of these events where Antifa was supposed to show up, and he was documenting Antifa. And there was a guy in the crowd throwing rocks and breaking windows, and the crowd was telling him, "Hey, stop doing that! Da da da. We're not about that. This is nonviolent. Da da da. You're screwing it up, whatever." And he kept doing it. Of course, he had a mask on and stuff, so he didn't give a shit. He kept doing it, and so Luke goes over to try to confront him. He runs off, right? And so Luke follows him with the camera guy. Pardon me. And he keeps following him. The guy keeps trying to evade him, run away. He ends up going behind the police line, and the police sort of like welcome him in. They know who he is, and they won't let Luke follow him past the police line. And he's like, "Hey, he was throwing bricks. He was doing this and that, da da da." And they were like, "No, you need to leave. You need to leave. Da da da. Shut that off." And so what's really happening. So all of this stuff, and of course they're going to loop that on Fox News, and going to loop it on the Drudge Report and Breitbart. They're going to put it on all the right-wing, alt-right sites, and I mean all this stuff, right? So now you have people, of course, I'm not saying there aren't Antifa people doing crazy, stupid crap, but come on, there's crazy, stupid crap happening from all sorts of political, spectrum or on the spectrum. And in fact, we've seen some mass shootings come from relative right-wing folks. And we actually see killings happening from folks from these right-wing extremists, the alt-right extremists, and yet we have this guy whipping this armed crowd of people into a fervor. And Tucker Carlson's going to jump in on this bandwagon of this and push this.
He loves that white pride thing.
So he says, radical leftists in the United States of America have become so violent, so unhinged, he said, that patriot groups like the Oath Keepers now have to form strategic protection plans and train fellow Americans on how to protect themselves from these violent actors being drummed up and incited by CNN. How many times you've been to the airport and CNN's been playing and you just been like,
just wanted
fuck this shit! I'm breaking windows! Yeah. I mean, God, come on, CNN. I mean, I've been watching. I mean, I don't even like CNN, but I mean, I've been around CNN.
I watch MSNBC, and it's far more.
I've been exposed to CNN for most of my life, and I've never been turned into a violent actor that I know of. By the likes of Brian Stelter. I was listening to his SoundCloud channel for a while. I mean, I've never been motivated to violence, and
he doesn't. Yeah,
I mean, I'm still anti-fascist, but I'm not like I didn't punch any Nazis lately or nothing. I'm letting Brian Stelter down. I'm like, oh good, I put my portrait of him down. Like I worship him. And give him a tangerine every morning and light some incense. Anyway, so what else? Brian Stelter, and by the likes of Mayor New York Andrew Cuomo, and by the likes of Democratic Party Nancy Pelosi and Maxine Waters.
Save the best for last.
Oh God, they're motivating the left. Because they told people to give people hard times at restaurants or something like that. Oh my God. So the left in America, he continued, the Democratic Party and the radical left in America is trying to incite violence, and on multiple occasions have tried to kill Trump supporters and Republicans. Kill with exclamation point. Threatened to kill Trump and conservatives. So now patriots have to respond by protecting themselves.
How many right-wingers threatened to kill President Obama when he was elected?
Wow. I mean, it's some big stuff. I mean, so I don't know. Like, I mean,
I don't like Trump being a president. I don't want to kill him. I would like to maybe.
I'd like to see him highly embarrassed. Though I really wish, maybe I need to learn how to develop apps or something. I just really wish that there was like a politician tracker.
Yeah, we talked about that on the last.
Yeah, and just really, we could just they are supposed to work for us. If they do a shit job, they shouldn't be able to assimilate back into us. No. Very nice, you know what I mean? If they screw us, right? They should be tracked like a pedophile or something.
They don't want to get back into with us, anyways. They want to go on that ivory tower that they.
Even then, like, okay, so fine. Then you can only stay on these these islands of these ivory towers. Then don't step. That's why I'm saying they should be tracked. Like, if they enter the public, they better be disguised because, like. I might just go take an app development boot camp just so I can be like, all right, this is how you harness your phone's GPS and whatever. And then like, okay, if you see a politician, you can link their bio and this and that, and boom, there's a map. I mean, and then if you're in the area and you're on the app, then everyone can show up, and like you can have like little I don't know. We'll
You
have to
could
come
just
up.
steal the same.
Someday there's going to be
software
holograms, and there's
from,
going
like
to
the
you'll be able
dating
to.
app thing.
Oh yeah, right,
It's the
right.
same. Like, oh, you have a connection 20 feet away. Oh, shit.
Oh damn, there's a politician I want to
Yeah,
roast
20
like
feet
20
away.
feet away. Screw
Yeah.
this guy. And then
Exactly.
someday we'll be able to like click a button, there'll be like a hologram sign that comes out of your
Yeah.
screen, and you're like, go away, or
Yeah.
whatever, you know what I
Just
mean?
lay your phone
See,
down.
that would work. I think people would do more for the people, possibly. But then again, they think they're going to be isolated in this sort of like enclave of an apartheid state between the basically property class. You know, it's like basically what Marx already predicted.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, like you end up having to, you say that kind of stuff, and then people automatically think you're like a communist.
Oh,
or
if
something.
you bring up Karl Marx, you're communist.
But yeah, basically it's going to get worse and worse, and we've already see it in other capitalist countries happening. Like look at Hong Kong, you know.
Oh yeah.
There's people living. I saw an article. I mean, it's probably Vice or something, or Vox or something. I don't know, something with a V. Watch it be something like Great Big Story or something. I think it was Vox or Vice. Anyway, they did a thing on these cage homes. I don't know if you've seen it, where basically people are staying in a home the size of basically less than a parking space.
Oh, and what they're paying for them? Oh
yeah. You know, they're paying hundreds a month for
like
these.
a hotel. It's like a hotel room, not even.
Not
well,
even.
Like it's like a Korean
almost
hotel room that you rent like by the 2-hour blocks. It's a bed and a bathroom, and that's it.
Love hotel. Huh?
Yeah.
Well, but yeah, it's basically. I mean, I saw in this. I mean, some of them were like basically the size of a bed,
Right.
and they had stuff like around the bed, and I was like, they're living stuff. I mean, it was crazy.
Lots of Korean
and people just like
that.
stacked. Like they literally climbed into this cage that was like.
Yeah, I was in a hotel in Korea.
That was someone's house.
It was little tubes.
No, oh yeah.
You just rented the tube,
and
you went there.
Yeah, but that's like.
But I'm saying
that's more of a temporary and
right. But I'm saying, but they're
and,
making that permanent. You know.
Oh
house.
yeah, like people are living that way, and the money system doesn't give any incentive for the government to do anything. And you would think the government would represent the people.
It's supposed to.
It's supposed to, right?
I think by definition, that's what.
Right. But I mean, so that's where things get, and I've been critiqued for having critical views of our Constitution, because at the end of the day, what did we? You know, I think you even mentioned this. Who was it really written for?
Right.
It was intended for this landed gentry.
Right.
To rule over a mass population.
And I also feel it was intentionally vague in many places to make sure it stayed in existence, because there's democracies that have been longer than, constitutional democracies that have existed longer than us. I think France has had like over 20 something, constitutions.
Dang.
Just because of the simple fact that they've made them.
Well, and they've they've been, as far as our Western history is concerned, they've had so much time as far as a nation. But obviously we don't have tribal history of who was happening indigenously here, but
it is what's kept our nation alive,
right?
Because it allows for people to interpret it differently, and I think that's why we have the Supreme Court. Now, granted, because we allow the politicians to appoint Supreme Court justices that are going to see the Constitution the same way they see it, that's not really impartial, as far as, there's not like a objective view coming from a lot of these justices.
Well, and there's
picked because of their particular views.
Well, there's that, and from what I understand, there's also been a multi-decade sort of strategy to push forward specific justices for specific presidential times and whatnot. And
absolutely.
And through money, through connections, they sort of manipulate certain justices to pop out to the front. And so we're seeing the last couple justices really being the shills of these organizations that are basically padding the way for these people. And the thing is, because of the diametric way that our society, especially now, has been taught to think, that we can't talk about something that's fluid. You have, if I say that the last couple, justices are bad for whatever purpose, the quote unquote right wing people will defend them to no end, no matter what.
Right.
They don't care what they might have been involved in. If it's taking corporation rights over workers' rights, even to the point of someone dying. I think Gorsuch was involved with someone who ended up dying, and he sided on the side of the corporation, stuff like that. And basically they're paid shills for corporate interests, and now they're on the Supreme Court. And you would think people who cared about our country and really cared about the Constitution would recognize that, hey, there's a poison that's being injected and what's going on. But idealism, or not even ideology, it's like the tribal connection of not being a pussy hat wearing queer or something, you know what I mean? Or a black or a Mexican or something, you know what I mean? And that's what the Democrats are.
Yeah.
And because there's a representation in the opposite of that, of some sort, then that's what they have to be.
Yeah. You can't change your colors, basically. Once you're this, you're always that.
Yeah, and it's just I don't know. I don't get it. I get accused a lot of times, especially by right-wing people, or what most people would consider right-wing. I get accused of being a lefty or a commie or socialist or whatever, and I'm like, I'm trying to figure out, how do we make this work if we look at it objectively? You know what I mean? And I'm trying to seek the truth in what I'm talking about. And the reason why I'm coming at it from this perspective is because I grew up in a right-wing environment. My dad was very, very right-wing. I was around a lot of right-wing people for the most part. I didn't really understand, quote unquote, who would be left-wing.
Right.
And because my upbringing sort of steered me away from that to a degree, I never really understood what a lot of stuff that I heard that would be considered right wing versus left wing, as if you were trying to summarize it, was just basically stuff that I felt wasn't very compassionate.
Right.
And I felt myself saying, well, this is the way I'm supposed to think about something. It
bitches on welfare. That's my tax dollars helping support the family over there.
Well,
yeah,
so fucking why?
It didn't go along with the other lessons that I was being taught as far as what was right and what was good. Like, don't judge a book by its cover. Those kinds of things. Just treat everyone with respect.
Judge a man unless you've walked a day in his shoes.
Whatever. All of these things, right? All of these things were taught as a kid to live up to and whatever. And then when we end up faced with people that don't want to see it that way at all.
I think there's like we had talked about last time, there's a bit of a sociopathic switch with these people. I was talking to a guy the other day, and we were discussing Trump. He's a huge supporter of Trump. He admits he's not perfect, and but he's strong, and he'll say what we need him to say, and and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, so I kind of backed him into a corner, and he's like, well, I don't live by my political views anyways. I'm deeply rooted in my faith. And I'm like, well, if that's the case, you really probably shouldn't be a big fan of Trump if you consider Christianity to be.
Sure.
Because I can't think of one thing that Trump has done that Jesus would have approved of. And isn't that the motto for Christians, is what would Jesus do? I mean, so, and that's where I say there's that hypocrisy, right? That they don't see any conflict with being, followers of Christ and doing everything that he would not do, and supporting someone who is doing everything that he would not do, based on the biblical representation of who Christ was anyways.
Yeah, I mean, It does. But here's the thing, though. I mean, I think you're probably finding this. I'm sure. Does it matter to that guy?
No.
Do you think there's any words that you could say that would change his mind, or that would open him up to listen to where you're coming from?
I've tried the the intellectual approach. I've tried just the dummy. He's just a fucking idiot. Blah, blah, blah. I've tried to say, hey, he's like, well, what has he done? And I listed off a whole list of things that he's done, and all he had to say was, we'll just agree to disagree, because he couldn't defend it because it's facts. This is all the things that he has done that is detrimental to our country.
But why? Why does it not matter? Why?
I don't know.
I don't understand it. I don't, and it's all. How do you? What kind of ad wizard bamboozled this group of people so hardcore? They are like so getting cucked by whoever is doing this is like the master genius of there's a lot of theories that are floating around now that after McCain passed, that the rise of Trump couldn't have happened without Sarah Palin. That before, and then it's sort of a mark.
People that defend her.
Yes, and you always had the sort of Rush Limbaugh sort of like, oh my God, I can't believe he said something somewhat detrimental to women, or he called like. He said something like he used the word kike or something. Who knows? I don't fucking know. But it's like sort of mild shit, Right. And now it's almost like, Sarah Palin comes out and someone says, holy shit, it doesn't matter if you're batshit fucking stupid crazy. These motherfuckers are on it. It doesn't fucking matter.
Exactly.
Just don't be a fucking LGBT queer brown fucking or white not white apology, but like a white, what do you call it, like race traitor or whatever. Right, yeah. What do you call it? White guilt, something. I don't know. There's a word that these people come up with for that.
It's race traitor.
Shame, something about shame, something. I don't know.
Shame your heritage.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, so I mean, so we see. This is what I'm talking about. Like when I'm in this, and last episode I got sort of in this rant where I feel like I'm calling it as it is. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of Ben Shapiro. I'm tired of Jordan Peterson's. I'm tired of the Dave Rubins. I'm tired of the people, even the Milton Friedmans. If you go back and watch old Milton Friedman, they are being disingenuous, and they're leaving out either they haven't thought about it deeply enough, as in they haven't read Marx at all. They haven't even read Adam Smith, because there's some chunks of stuff they're leaving out. So either they haven't even really thought about it that hard, and they're only giving us their superficial analysis, or they know about it and they are lying by omission.
Yeah.
And that's still lying.
Yeah.
So they are liars.
Yeah.
And so and I was trying to make the point that, hey, it's hard to have a conversation with a liar. It's hard to talk to someone and have a rational conversation with someone who's willing to lie and omit the truth.
Right, because they already have proven themselves to not give a shit about facts.
Right.
Because if they're willing,
but then they will claim that they all care so much about facts, and then of course Ben Shapiro will rattle off a bunch of bullshit. Citing all these police statistics where I'm like, well, or FBI statistics or whatever. I'm like, okay, well, who are we complaining about? Oh, the police. Okay, well, who do you think feeds police statistics?
Yeah, every police,
I guess
sheriff,
the fucking
commissioner,
police. Yeah. So if we're investigating the police, can we trust their own numbers? Isn't that sort of some sort of stupid circular logic? But of course he'll say it real fast. Well, then the FBI numbers show it. I'm like, I don't give a fuck what the FBI says at this point. Where do those numbers come from? The same. I mean, how about you quote the FBI report telling us white supremacists have infiltrated a major chunk of the law enforcement organizations through the country. Mm-hmm. Right, you're going to quote the FBI statistics on whatever feeds your fancy, right, but you don't quote the opposite side.
And it's
right?
cherry.
And so it's like, hey, come on. Yeah, sure. Okay. Or, you know, talking about police violence against black people or something. Well, there's people dying in Chicago. Why don't you do something about that? I'm like, dude, well, why don't you do something about the white supremacists? Why don't you do something about the mass killings? Why don't you don't want to take any responsibility for anything that's happening on your side, but you want to create, but you also don't see race, and it's not about race, but it's like, oh, well, you're responsible for the actions of unrelated people when we're talking about agents of the state. But they either are too ignorant to make that distinction, or they're lying, and they know,
which is worse.
But I think I got sort of in a tiff last time because I said that I called it out for lying, as it's what I called it, instead of this sort of smarmy like debate tactic to win a debate. I'm just tired of that shit. It's like
I can't do it. Like I told you last time, I said you're far more patient than me.
No, I can't. I would be too impatient if I'm listening to Ben Shapiro rattle off a bunch of bullshit. I'm like, dude, shut up. I'm not even. Or he's like, well, we're talking about Stalin and these socialists and they do. I'm like, dude, I'm not even fucking talking about that. I'm not. I don't give a shit who builds your car as long as they don't. If they move their plant, it doesn't destroy a town. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's work. It's a partnership, synergy, right? Let's work this out. They are nothing without the workers, right? I mean, the CEO's not building the cars themselves. So let's think about this. Or like, I'm really upset about, as much as I don't agree with a lot of Alex Jones shit, I think that it's a dangerous precedent to remove his shit because now I've from what I'm hearing, they're if you're putting out pro-Iran stuff, they're starting to take your shit down. Pro-Palestine stuff. Yeah, they're gonna censor.
That's because I just heard this report,
and the Saudis, just someone of the Saudis just bought majority shares in Twitter or something.
But I just heard this report on NPR the other day that this group that goes out and they look for like interference in U.S.
elections.
Well, not necessarily elections, but who's influencing American populace through social media. And so they found out that a lot of this stuff was coming from Iran. Well, if it's a fact that, Israel is occupying sovereign people, that's a fact. That's something all Americans should know, but they refuse to know that. If they're talking about how the U.S. has a history of overthrowing rulers in their region, they have the perfect example, So it's like, well, so what? Iran's sending information into our, social media.
Sure.
But is it factual information?
Right.
And are you just pissed off because it's Iran providing the facts that our, media outlets would not reveal to the populace? So I agree with you that it is I hate Alex Jones, so it's no skin off my back, but I get where you're coming from with the precedent it sets. But again, these are private corporations. They don't have to follow the Constitution.
That's true. But at the same time, what is YouTube without its contributors?
No, I agree.
Right. So, and it's almost to the point where there are arguments out there to be said that it should be like a public utility.
I would be.
Right. Because think of this. Can I just open my own internet to compete against the internet?
No.
I can't personally, right? And so I think there is an argument to be made that, like, it's almost like the same for cable or for usually there's only one cable provider in a area, because, and then it would become a logistical nightmare because how many cable lines, and everybody has to use their own this and that, and it becomes silly, right? And so the same thing's starting to happen with the internet as far as a shared network of a bunch of computers all linked together, you know what I mean? Right. No matter how you access it, either your smartphone or library or whatever. So it's almost like, or like water. We can't have like multiple private water companies. It would just be a weird situation. They're going to dig up pipes and like everybody's going to lay their own pipes in the ground. You know,
It's
like
just
I don't.
impractical.
How will that work? So we have to now say, okay, you know what? We're going to have sometimes it's a pseudo governmental entity. Sometimes it is a private entity. I don't know. Depends on the jurisdiction, municipality. But they've worked that out. And I'm wondering if the internet and stuff like Facebook, YouTube, those kinds of things, those basically social bulletin boards, is there an argument for saying that, hey, we should either, you can keep YouTube all you want and do whatever you want, censor all you want the way you want, because at the end of the day, you're looking at
shareholders
like the Saudis, that they don't want, bad news about Yemen and stuff like that coming out, or even the Palestine stuff and all that. Whatever, they just want everything to be their way, the way they want, and so they'll censor out because they're majority stakeholder now.
That's it.
And so, I mean, they own more than than the co-founder at this point, or at least as Prince or whatever. So now we have, through the money system, through the capitalist system, we have sold out our country to some degree, sold out some of our stuff as far as private enterprise.
Well, that's part of the free market, though.
That's free market, right? A lot of our land is bought by foreign entities. A lot of our debt is bought by foreign entities. I mean, it's just a lot of things have been sold out by our politicians under our noses because we haven't been vigilant over power. But now I wonder where the Oath Keepers were this whole time when that's been happening, and, so like we have this sort of weird situation where we do have private entities like Facebook, YouTube, Google, even, which YouTube and Google are all under Alphabet, and who knows, if they buy Facebook, then we'll have one single corporate freaking, and who knows, there's probably other major corporations I don't even know about, tech corporations. So at the end of the day, a tech algorithm written by some oligarchs and high tech influencers in these fields will then determine who gets to see what, and they'll be the arbiters of information. Is that what you think people out there in the world, right wingers, left wingers, do you think that is the world you want to live in, that they become the prophets of information?
No, I think that people like Alex Jones have the right, like anybody else, even conspiracy theories are conspiracy theories. Why are his any different than some other people's conspiracy theories that they have on it? Because he incites violence or hatred. Well, there's a lot of stuff on here. I mean, kids are killing themselves over what their friends say about them on Facebook.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. You're going to start cracking down on that too? You're going to just block any Facebook post if it has a demeaning or derogatory.
It's starting to get that way. If people report you, they'll block you now. Yeah. So, I mean, but see, you could do that in a governmental sphere as well. And there's a lot of free speech that you're now protected under the First Amendment, which you don't get protection through these private entities necessarily. But at the same time, that now hate speech rules and all of that stuff, as if I would imagine, as if you yelled in the Commons fire that this is what, you could say fuck shit, whatever in a park, and people might say, hey dude, come on, man, I got kids. Right. But at the same time, you could be in a certain area of the park that says open to adults language, and you can say fuck shit, damn, all you want, G Williker, and as loud as you want, and nobody gives a shit, and that's the safe space. But you couldn't say, let's, like beat up this guy, or let's, incite violence of some sort, or yell fire, or stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think that, yes, the problem isn't Alex Jones. The problem is people that believe Alex Jones.
How do you stop that? How do you stop the charlatans from leading a flock?
You can't.
And then still have free speech.
You can't. It's not a possibility. But whenever we talked, last time we talked about corporations and the influence they have over our government, well, right there. If our government says, look, we got to stop this, and I would promise you right now that Trump loves Alex Jones. If it was up to him, he'd probably be in his, cabinet or an advisor.
He might be.
Yeah,
I think he supposedly visited the White House a couple times.
Yeah. I mean, he's done interviews with them through Skype. So, I mean, but money rules all. And if the shareholders are complaining, saying, look, we don't, we're going to start selling off, our Google shares or our Alphabet shares if you let people like him continue.
Yeah.
What are they going to do? They're going to lose the money, or are they going to put the kibosh on his free speech? I mean, money rules all, unfortunately.
I wonder what is it? Didn't Google put something in their prospectus where they said that they weren't going to necessarily rule the company by the whim of the shareholder, or
That's
something?
what they said before they went public.
Is that right? Before they went full public or something like? I know they did a couple offerings. That might have been their initial offering.
Yeah, and they've done many splits
before.
Yeah, maybe
and then before it was prior to
they went to
Alphabet. Yeah, it was prior to Alphabet. But I'm starting to wonder if a lot of this problem that we're having as well, with not only mass accumulations of capital, but also the influence of that capital. Now, if you're a multi-billionaire, how much does it cost to buy a senator from Kentucky?
Probably not much.
How much does it cost to buy the senator from Montana?
Not a lot. Ask the Koch brothers.
Yeah, exactly.
Politicians
right. So
years.
How much does it cost to think about it, people out there in the world? I mean, this is your country, or if it's not your country, if you're joining us from around the world somewhere, of course, you're probably subject in some way or feel the ripple of the U.S. foreign policy, because we sort of walk around with big galoshes and making big mud smashes everywhere.
Piss us off, we're just going to crush you.
And it's just, what was I going to say? Anyway, these things, I think we have to think about these things. I don't think we're open to really talking and thinking about these in a real truthful, logical way. Like, people will bring up, I remember, I think it was the last episode someone brought up, and I was talking about something along the lines of basically like a lot of the neoliberal, which is sort of a new term that's not being used in the mainstream public, but it's like the Margaret Thatcher, the Reagan, everything has a market solution. It's almost laissez-faire capitalism all the way, cranked up to 11 kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've already seen it happen before in laissez-faire capitalism, where before the massive crash that resulted as part of it. And so we have amnesia as a country, and we have a populace now, either by design or by chance, that does not see problems, or maybe don't have the critical ability, or not conditioned, or don't want to see it, or I don't know if they're lazy. I don't know what it is, but a lot of people don't even want to think objectively about what they're looking at, and so I'm talking about this, and then they bring up something like the LGBTQ or whatever crowd wants people to talk about a front hole versus a back hole, or a front hole and back hole instead of penis and vagina or something like that, to make it a non-sex, whatever. I'm like, I'm sure there's a few people out there that are talking about that, but I think labor rights are a little bit higher than that. Yeah. Having worker productivity, and I think when I keep hearing the big capitalist folks, and these are the other things. God, Marx predicted this too, and I hate to say it because I don't sound like a communist.
Don't worry about it.
It's the petite bourgeoisie. You have the bourgeois, right? The property owning class, the people that are running the corporations, and then you have the petite bourgeois, the managerial class, and maybe guys running, your shoe cobbler or your pizza shop owner, small business owner, and they start to think that they're like Jeff Bezos. Hey, we have a lot in common. Oh, me and the Koch brothers. Yeah, we shared beers the other day. Yeah, we totally do the same. We know the same stuff. And they fail to realize that the influence of the capitalists far overshadows the influence that they have and the interests that they have and the effects that they have on the community. Not to say that they don't have an effect. I mean, they do.
On the
Yes, exactly. And then as an aggregate, they have an effect on the as far as numbers wise, GDP, statistics, but as far as influence, as far as you organize influence, they have very little impact. But they always think that they will defend the rights against the proletariat, right? And we're seeing that now. So I saw
every small business owner I know thinks they're fucking
They think they're the same as Trump.
They think they're Jamie Dimon or some shit.
Right. It's this delusion, and so that feeds into this whole thing. And so we get the psych, and he even said it during that whole French Revolution and all that stuff when he's talking about the psychopathic tendencies of the petite bourgeoisie to say, oh, if you can't afford healthcare, then hey, Darwin at work.
Yeah.
Or I literally had one of my viewers put on here, Dustin, actually, he's a normal, what do you call it, a regular viewer. Hopefully he still is. I think he joined us today for a moment.
Sal Diaz on there.
Oh yeah, look at that. And I thank him for jumping in, and I'm using him as a springboard a lot for this because he's a very active participant, and he's a contrapoint to a lot of what I'm saying. But he says you reap what you sow. So when I talk about people using GoFundMe, and I'm like, what if, let's say you're autistic and you're on the spectrum and your parents are lame and this and that, and you don't have anybody and you can't reach out, or I'm just using autistic as an example, but it could be, let's say you're an introvert and you can't find it in yourself to put together a good GoFundMe campaign to save your life. And his response is, I'm sorry, you're reaping what you have sown, or something like that. And I called him a psychopath, and because I didn't know what else to say. I mean, that you are petite bourgeoisie.
It's complete lack of empathy.
Exactly.
Definition of psychopath.
Right. So, but then he's like, well, as I let a fly out of my house, without killing it. I'm like, well, that's so weird. American psychopath probably would say the same kind of thing as he put on his
Christian Bale.
Yeah, as he put on his raincoat and got his axe, and then let the spider out of the window. Don't kill it, but let me hack up this person. Not to say he's gonna have dust. I'm not saying you're gonna hack up a person. I'm just saying that
like you're on your way to it. Though. I don't know.
It's just. I'm getting to the point where I'm losing patience with things, and we're getting to the point where we're in a post-civility world. And you got guys out there saying that there's going to be this insurrection. It's not about race. It's about the ability to bring in people who can assimilate or who want to assimilate and come here legally. So that's what it's about. We have to stop the illegal flow from the South. It's the end game for the left. It's why the Antifa were chanting in the streets of DC, no border, no wall, no America at all. Because they know, I wonder if he said it in a rhyming way with cadence. Or do you think he just read it off? I didn't watch the video.
I didn't watch the video. But
he probably just said it all no cadence. No border, no wall, no America at all. How lame that would be. Because they know that there will be they know that will be their way to victory and a permanent lock on illegitimate power. We've got to stop it. So, I mean, it's like, what if you don't play the Democrats, Republicans game? What if you just don't you just want a country that's the best possible country per the Constitution that it could possibly be for the American people, for the good of the American people. Is that what our country's supposed to be? And that's why I keep asking, the Constitution was made for the landed gentry, what Madison would call the opulent minority. So that being said, if we truly are loyal to the Constitution, then are we loyal to the idea or the original notion that it was built under of an opulent minority ruling over the majority of the subjects now, of not so much the citizens per se?
I don't think so. I mean, It depends on.
Can we
How
change that as we the people?
Can we change
As the way we interpret the Constitution?
Absolutely. It's a living, breathing document. That's what
Right.
amendments are for. If we don't understand something, we should demand that there be an amendment to clarify.
Mm-hmm.
That way, there is no room for that influence anymore. It's you've violated the Constitution. Boom, right here, black and white. Here's the amendment. Just like the Second Amendment was added in there, so to give people the right to bear arms and to have militias. Okay, well, how do I interpret what a militia is in 2018 compared to 1782?
That becomes a really tricky thing, and that's why I'm like, how cool would it be if there really was a militia fighting for constitutional rights and what would that look like? What would their interpretation of the Constitution?
Exactly.
And here we're seeing a gross, I think, misinterpretation of the Constitution.
Oh, absolutely. Well, they just are
being carried
ignoring very clear parts of the Constitution.
Yeah, I mean, this reference to God and fearing God and being, that they need to be brought God
and where is
to
that
to the inner city, the liberal, the urban centers or something like that.
Where's that in the Constitution?
There's a lot of colonial or imperial type talk,
even
coming into battle into these folks are coming from the countryside.
Most
they're
of them.
Coming from the hills down into the city.
I would say most of them.
Happening?
I mean, look, if you just look at the concentration of, we're going to use Democrat, Republican right now.
Yeah.
Of the voting blocks, right? Whenever there's an election and you're watching the map, I mean, the whole state will be red except for the urban cores.
Nah, okay, yeah.
You see, and that'll be the blue areas,
Mm.
and that'll be what wins a state. So the more rural a state is, the more red it is.
But I don't really get the rural. How did the rural America become so anti-government when rural America was built on land grants and government programs,
Subsidized farming?
Yeah.
Well, it's because those are the kids. Like the original topic we were going to talk about, those are the kids that are enlisting. They want to get off the farm.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to be able to afford to go get an education, so they enlist, not for any real particular reason. And then they get that brainwashing from the military. America's the greatest country in the world. Everything we do is righteous. We can do no wrong. And then they come out, they go back to farming, or they retire back in their communities. And then it just builds. I mean,
but how did they become so anti-government, especially from the military time?
All military people, when they get out, right, they hate the government. And
But
I
they
don't
spent
understand.
so much time depending on the government.
Yeah.
And then they continue
And
to
fighting
extract
for it.
government benefits
Mhm.
that they deserve, right? Okay,
Mhm.
fine. You work for the government. I think we've all agreed that you get these benefits. But then to be so anti-government except for the military.
Yeah.
And I think about stuff like, again, going back to the straw man that you always see, like the Ben Shapiro's and all that, when you start talking about universal health care and stuff, and they talk about Stalin and Lenin for Venezuela. It's like, nobody said to do away with the free market system. We're just saying certain things like, your life, your health shouldn't be a profit motive tied to that. That's too heavy of a hostage situation.
Yeah.
Let's not do that. Just like holding roads hostage, holding a hospital hostage to you, to make it so that if you don't pay the fee to get in, then you can't get seen.
Right.
That's sort of an evil that we don't want to live with, I think, as a country. But some people are fine with that.
Mhm.
And I was thinking, like, well, a lot of times I've seen people say, well, if you want those things, then go join the military, go fight for your country, go serve your country, and you can get those things. And I think, well, why does it have to be so transactional like this? and to what end? Like, serve it how? To who? Like, let's think about this in some level of depth. Who does the military work for?
Yeah, you're just working for the whims of the president. I mean,
At this point, I think there was a point in our history where the president wouldn't be able to declare such broad, sweeping powers to do whatever they
executive orders and finagling of constitution or congressional powers. Yes, but I really came prepared for the first subject, but
Oh man, I'm
that's
sorry.
no, that's all right. We could come back for that. But I think it's not that altruistic. People don't join the military just for the fact they want to serve their country. It's not all about, I want to be a servant.
You hear it a lot, but I think there's a veneer of the core of reality. They want the benefit of, like, I want to go to college, or I see a future. I can go there through the military.
Right.
And in the military, don't get me wrong. I come from a military background. Sean was in the military. It's not that we're anti-military. I see an absolute distinct need for military. In fact, I even thought about this on the, trying to say, how do we get people sold on the idea, those people that oppose it in those grounds but are so pro-military? What if we're just all in the military now? Like, we're all part of a national defense force. We're all in the military. And we might be called into duty if we're invaded.
Yeah. Well, I think that
done. We're all in the military. We're all defense force. Maybe we all get small arms training. I'm okay with that. If you want to, if you don't want to, okay, maybe you can do some other thing like medic. Hey, how many things are there out in the expanse of military preparedness? A whole bunch, right? So boom, now we're all in the military. We all get health care.
Never gonna happen.
Wouldn't that make everybody happy? Like, okay, you're willing to serve your country. Yeah. If we get invaded, you're going to be called to the front line. So there you go. Until we're invaded, which isn't going to happen. Especially if you know that every citizen is in the military. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So, like, they're done. And here's the thing. If you really don't want to go to training and stuff like that, I'm sure we can come up with some opt-out provision. Yeah. But how many people would be would actually get in shape and stuff, possibly, to go and be down to defend, especially if they broke it into little local things and stuff like that, and you're part of this Defend America force?
It wouldn't happen.
It's not that you would actually be. That's the thing. But it would help people digest the idea that everyone should have the same benefits that the military would have.
We have become such a consumer society.
Yeah.
That getting in shape and our health, we don't give a shit about that.
But see, part of that is I also have plans for government subsidized housing, right? Which also has connection to a sort of, because technology is advancing so much, where you can have grow centers, where you can basically have urban farming happening, mass scale urban farming, and people can, like, you in exchange for living at the house, you can be the groundskeeper or something.
I love these ideas, but
if we just put some little bit of money away to one place or another.
But that goes back to what we talked about before. Our government would never spend money on projects like that, because what are they getting out of it?
Yeah, well, it's for the people.
But they don't give a shit.
Oh no, yeah, they don't. Yeah, they don't. No, you would need.
That's corporations would be like, oh no, that would cut into our profits.
Right, and that's exactly why you need to do it.
Oh no, I agree with you.
Yeah, I think
people will never accept that because, first of all, we watch a lot of TV. All those corporations.
I think if you build it, I think if someone builds it. So here's the shitty thing, right? I think, like, I'm going to have to become, we got billionaires out there right now because of the massive powers of capitalism and the way that we can magnify it on a global scale. So massive accumulations of money. They could create these things that I have in mind, right? And it would save massive, shortages and poverty and all this stuff. And it would also help to reinvigorate a consumer base in the long term, right? In the long term, of course. And it would save capitalism, actually.
But we need
what's going to happen is capitalism's going to have to fail hardcore on its face, because people aren't going to see what it's going to happen until they starve, until we have the second Great Depression, which is going to hit harder than the first Great Depression because people still knew how to be self-subsistent or sufficient at least. I mean, if someone, there was a point where people were hungry enough to make, cook down a shoe and make it into something, shit like that. Now, I mean, imagine, right? Some 30-year-old person doing that, or a 28.
They would just sit there and starve in misery instead.
Right. So it's gonna. I think that the conditions are ripe for a massive socialist revolution if the capitalists don't cede to these sort of stopgap solutions like guys like me have on how to take the pressure off capitalism, take the pressure off the monetary system, and put the focus back on the people. Because if you don't, when capitalism fails, the guillotines will come out. And just as the agents of the state and agents of corporate America get more sophisticated, the people who develop them come from the populace. Yeah. The populace gets, and it will become, and if it hasn't already become this, I mean, we see the Oath Keepers. Who's on the opposite side of the Oath Keepers? I'm wondering, will there be an opposite contingent out there that
apparently they are, because that's who they're gathering to fight.
I mean, the Antifa people. I mean, really, there's not. they're literally not organized. That's their part of one of their tenets. It's almost like anonymous. So here, the Oath Keepers are a very hierarchical, specifically organized effort to do this, whatever they're doing. So anyway, but. So if you're catching this, looks like I don't think we have anyone live with us. So if you're catching this on the archive, put a comment in there. Tell us what you think about the militant or violent left, if there even is such a thing. Again, I thought I don't even identify as left, really. I just don't identify as that with the Oath Keepers. But yeah, I want to hear what conservatives think about this movement. Do you really feel like, I hear about post-Marxism or postmodernism and cultural Marxism from Ben Shapiro and his friends and all these Koch-sponsored and Turning Point-sponsored people out there, and Prager University, and there's these charlatans out there that are pseudo-intellectuals trying to masquerade these sort of debunked silly things. Anyway, tell us what you think. And Sean, thank you so much for coming on again.
Thank you,
dude. It's awesome. Again, you make me feel like I'm less crazy than I feel sometimes on this show. But yeah, another episode of The Boyd. Remember, like and subscribe, and all that good stuff. And by the way, if you want to be on The Boyd, just hit me up. You can Skype in, or you can Facebook call. That works too. Whatever you want to do. But let me see here. And I hope the audio was working throughout this podcast. Maybe it wasn't. I sort of heard it come in and out. But join us next time. I don't know exactly what we'll be talking about. And let me know what you guys want to talk about. It's another episode of The Boyd.